"Did you look through all those pictures?" The voice, cool, white, feminine, unmistakably controlled, broke the stillness behind him. Darius Coleman froze. His hands hovered above the keyboard, heartbeat tightening, breath catching in his throat. On the laptop screen, her face glowed softly from a private photograph he had never been meant to see. Darius Coleman had repaired enough broken machines in his life to know when a problem was ordinary and when a machine was trying to confess something. Tonight, inside the glass tower of Hale Vision Media, the laptop on Victoria Hale's desk felt less like a device and more like a locked door cracking open. The office was nearly silent except for the hum of the HVAC and the distant traffic far below on Midtown's late-night streets. Only one office still glowed on the executive floor, and Darius stood in the middle of it, sleeves rolled up, heartbeat steady but alert. The machine froze again, cursor locked, as if holding its breath. He muttered under his breath, "Come on, sweetheart. Tell me what's wrong." The laptop flickered, screen washed white for a second, then recovered except now a window popped open that he had not clicked. A folder, a personal one. For a full second he didn't understand what he was seeing. Then the thumbnails resolved into images. Victoria outside the public eye. Photos of her barefoot in a sunlit kitchen, hair undone. Sitting on a cabin porch upstate with a blanket around her shoulders. Painting on a canvas while wearing a worn men's shirt. Looking at the camera without her usual armor. Eyes softer, almost fragile. Darius inhaled sharply. His fingers lifted from the keyboard as if it had burned him. He hadn't intended to open anything except the corrupted directory the CEO's assistant had mentioned. He moved to close the folder, but the quiet voice behind him repeated, calmer this time. Don't. He froze again. He hadn't heard her come in. Victoria Hale stood just behind him, blazer off, silk blouse unbuttoned at the collar, heels abandoned on the floor beside her desk. Her composure was intact, but her eyes were focused, sharp, and entirely unreadable. "You saw them, didn't you?" she said, not accusing, not afraid, simply certain. Darius swallowed. "Miss Hale, I clicked the wrong directory while cross-checking the corrupted—" "Stop." She stepped closer, and he could smell faint citrus from her perfume, subtle and expensive. Then she surprised him by lowering her voice, as if to keep the night itself from overhearing. "Tell me the truth, Mr. Coleman. When you look at those photos, do you see a woman who is beautiful, or do you only see a powerful white CEO who could end your career if she wanted to?" The question punched straight through his professionalism. Darius had been asked many things in his years working support, some rude, some absurd, some borderline insulting, but never anything like this. He turned slowly, meeting her eyes. He could lie. He could give a safe, corporate answer. But something about her expression, controlled yet vulnerable, told him she already knew every version of dishonesty people usually offered her. "I see a woman," he said finally, his voice low. "A real one. Somebody who looks a lot more human in those photos than the world ever lets her be." Silence expanded between them, thick but not hostile. A muscle in her jaw softened. She stepped back slightly, reclaiming her composed distance. "Fix the machine," she said, but the words lacked sharpness. "We'll talk about the rest another time." Darius nodded, turned back to the laptop, closed the folder with deliberate care. He finished the repairs with a precision that bordered on reverence, every keystroke measured. When he packed his tools, Victoria had already returned to the window, looking out at the luminous sprawl of Manhattan like a queen surveying a troubled kingdom. He cleared his throat gently. "Your system should be stable now." She didn't turn. "Good night, Mr. Coleman." Not dismissal, not warmth, something in between, something complicated. He rode the elevator down alone. The cables hummed around him, that metallic song rising and falling as if the tower itself breathed. The digital floor numbers blinked past. 40, 35, 28. Each level a reminder of how many floors separated him from people who made decisions that could crush or elevate him in seconds. He wondered why she had asked that question, and why she hadn't fired him. The lobby was quiet when he stepped out, a security guard sipping coffee, the scent of floor polish lingering in the marble hall. As he crossed the empty space toward the revolving doors, Darius felt something in his chest he couldn't name. Not desire, not fear, something stranger, the sense that he had glimpsed a fracture line in someone the entire world considered unbreakable. Outside, the city greeted him with its restless neon heartbeat. A bus rumbled past, lights reflecting off puddles from a drizzle earlier that night. He zipped his jacket and walked toward the subway, hands in pockets, replaying her question over and over. Do you see a woman who's beautiful? Or just a powerful white boss who could ruin your life? Most people in his position would try to forget an encounter like that, pretend it didn't happen. His life would be easier if he could. But as the train roared into the station and wind pressed against his coat, Darius knew one thing with unsettling clarity. Whatever had started tonight in that quiet office, under those softened lights, was not finished, and whether he liked it or not, he had just stepped onto a path that would drag him far above his pay grade, far below the polished surface of the company, and straight into danger he couldn't yet see. He held the pole as the train lurched forward, the city flashing past in streaks of gold. Somewhere on the top floor, Victoria Hale was probably back at her desk, rebuilding her armor for the morning. And somewhere deep inside him, beneath years of restraint, something whispered that this was only the beginning. Darius woke the next morning to the soft crackle of his old clock radio, the familiar voice of the local DJ drifting through his small Brooklyn apartment. For a moment he lay still, letting the remnants of the previous night settle into place. The train ride, the elevator descent, her voice echoing behind him. Did you look through all those pictures? All of it replayed with a clarity that felt too sharp for dawn. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping his living room with pale gold. He pushed himself upright, shoulders aching from tension he hadn't admitted he was carrying. On the kitchen counter, his mother's photo, her nurse's scrubs, her proud smile watched him with the same quiet encouragement it always had. "Morning, Ma," he murmured, touching the frame lightly before starting his coffee. The ritual steadied him. Heat, scent, the gentle hum of the machine, a small comfort in a life shaped by routines he could control. Work, however, was not one of them today. Not after last night. On the ride into Manhattan, the subway rumbled beneath the city like a restless giant. Darius stood swaying with the train's rhythm, coffee thermos warming his palms, while the events of the night continued to loop in his mind. Her tone, her question, her eyes when she asked if he saw beauty or power. He reminded himself again that he needed to keep his head down today. Avoid attention, avoid speculation, avoid feeding any rumor the executive floor might cook up after hours. But when he stepped out onto the crowded sidewalk and into the towering lobby of Hale Vision Media, a different kind of heaviness settled onto his shoulders. As he scanned his badge at the turnstile and the green light blinked, he felt as though the entire building was watching. Upstairs, the day's usual chaos unfolded, designers darting between glass conference rooms, interns carrying too many notebooks, senior managers barking half-formed instructions about deliverables. Just another Tuesday. Except not for him. The stares were subtle at first, a glance that lingered a beat too long, a whispered comment from two junior staffers who quickly looked away when Darius passed. He kept moving, choosing not to absorb any of it, yet the tension in the air felt oddly concentrated, like static before a storm. He reached the IT department, tucked into the far corner of the floor behind a wall of soundproof partitions. Marcus was already at the main desk, pouring coffee from a battered thermos that smelled vaguely like burnt caramel. The older man lifted an eyebrow the moment he saw Darius. "You look like someone who didn't sleep," Marcus said. Darius set his bag down. "I slept, but not well, something like that," Marcus grunted knowingly. "Big people on the top floor keep you late again?" Darius hesitated. He couldn't exactly say, "Actually, Marcus, I accidentally saw the CEO's private photos, and she asked if I thought she was beautiful." That wasn't a story he could tell anyone, certainly not here, so he simply nodded. "Yeah, system was acting up." Marcus gave him a long, slow look. Not suspicious, just perceptive. Well, brace yourself. Folks been buzzing since early. Something's moving up there. Moving? Meetings. Calendars shifting. Assistants running around like their pants are on fire. Saw Hale's assistant twice this morning. She usually doesn't leave the executive suite before noon. A weight pressed at the base of Darius's neck. He kept his expression neutral. What's that got to do with us? Everything funnels through IT eventually. Upgrades, permissions, security checks. Marcus sipped his coffee, then dropped his voice. And when people with power start acting strange, it's always the folks without power who get crushed when the gears turn. Darius didn't respond. He didn't have to. Marcus's words followed him as he logged into his workstation and reviewed the overnight system reports. Everything appeared stable. No anomalies. No alerts. Nothing that betrayed the emotional earthquake of the night before. But around mid-morning, an email landed in his inbox with a soft chime. From Assistant to CEO, subject, request from Miss Hale. Please come to the executive floor at your earliest availability. Her office is expecting you. His stomach clenched. Marcus peered over. Trouble? Not sure yet. Darius smoothed his shirt, closed the open tabs, and rose from his chair. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, he joked weakly, tell my mother I loved her. Marcus snorted. If you're not back in 20 minutes, I'll assume they promoted you and forgot to tell us little people. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. When the doors opened onto the executive corridor, the air carried a different temperature cooler, sharper, as if climate control obeyed hierarchy. Assistants hurried past with tablets and anxious expressions. A meeting room door stood open, revealing half a dozen department heads whispering intensely under low voices. As Darius approached Victoria Hale's office, her assistant, a polished woman with impeccable posture, gave him a brief nod. She's expecting you. Go in. He took a steadying breath and stepped inside. Victoria stood near her desk, fully composed this time, heels on, blazer crisp, hair tightened back into the sleek style she wore for public appearances. The transformation from the woman he'd seen last night was striking. Not surprising, but striking. She didn't look at him immediately. She finished reviewing a document, placed it neatly in a folder, then lifted her gaze. Good morning, Mr. Coleman. Her tone was professional, almost cold. The shift made him straighten instinctively. Good morning, Miss Hale. She gestured toward the seating area by the window. Sit, please. He did. She remained standing a moment longer before joining him, a tablet in hand. Her profile was unreadable, controlled, distant. Yet, when she finally spoke, there was a deliberate precision in her words, each syllable chosen, measured. Last night's system issue wasn't isolated, she said. We're preparing for a major strategic partnership. Before we proceed, I want a complete audit of all internal systems. Darius blinked. A full audit? End to end. Every server, every credential, every legacy directory. I want transparency. Total clarity. He stopped himself before saying, impossible. That's a significant amount of work. Which is why I'm giving you expanded access. She tapped her tablet. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the access change already processed. You'll report directly to me. His pulse thumped. Directly to her. Not through the IT director, not through management. Straight to the top. Miss Hale, he said carefully, may I ask why you're trusting me with this? Victoria studied him in a silence that stretched just long enough to unsettle him. Because some people, she said softly, see the truth even when they weren't meant to. And right now, I need someone who isn't afraid to look. The implication struck him like a physical force. She wasn't talking about the photos. Or not only about the photos. Something else was happening inside this company, something she hadn't named. She rose, signaling the meeting was over. Begin today. Keep your findings confidential. And Mr. Coleman, he paused at the doorway. Whatever you saw last night, she said without turning, You handled it with more integrity than most people I've worked with." He didn't breathe for a moment. "Thank you," he said quietly. She gave the faintest nod. He left the office with his thoughts in a tight, tangled knot. He wasn't sure whether he had just been entrusted with responsibility or handed a ticking bomb, but one thing was certain. The quiet encounter of last night had consequences far louder than he ever imagined, and the first step into those consequences had just begun. If you were in his shoes, caught between the fear of losing your job and the urge to be honest, how would you answer her? Tap like and comment below. Type 1 if you think she's truly beautiful, or 2 if you don't. And if you feel the weight of his emotions in that moment, let me know in the comments. Darius returned to the IT floor with the new access credentials burning a metaphorical hole in his pocket. The badge on his lanyard looked the same, but its permissions were now wide enough to expose corners of the company he had never been allowed to see, and that alone made every hallway feel narrower, every glance sharper. He settled into his chair, logged into the secure terminal, and watched as entire folders, once locked behind layers of administrative restrictions, unfolded before him. Marcus wandered over, mug in hand, eyes tired but alert. "So," he said casually, "what did the Queen of the Tower want with you this morning?" Darius kept his focus on the screen, which was a safer place to rest his gaze. "System audit." Marcus blinked. "A full one? End to end?" The older man let out a low whistle. "They don't ask for those unless someone up top is sweating bullets, or unless someone's hiding something," Darius murmured. Marcus's eyebrows climbed. "You saying that? Or thinking out loud?" "Both." Darius didn't elaborate, and Marcus didn't push, but the older man hovered for a moment longer before clapping a hand on Darius's shoulder. "Watch your back, son. When you climb too close to the sun, even accidentally, people notice." With that, he drifted away, leaving Darius alone with a network map that looked suddenly more threatening than technical. The system audit began smoothly enough: log checks, credential reports, encryption validation, endpoint scans. Routine work, only on a much larger scale. But within the first hour, something subtle bothered him. A small anomaly, a timestamp that didn't match. A log entry overwritten by a newer one, too cleanly overwritten. Someone had tampered with data, but not sloppily. With precision. He leaned in. There was a pattern, faint but consistent, like tension under a layer of paint. He opened cross-referenced logs, more mismatched timestamps, more overwritten entries. At first glance it was nothing. To anyone else it would be nothing. But Darius had seen this trick before credential shadowing. A malicious user creating a cloned set of permissions and hopping between identities to erase their own tracks. Only high-level staff could execute this level of manipulation. Which meant this wasn't a casual mistake. This was intentional. He sat back slowly, a tightness forming behind his ribs. A question formed. Who has enough access to pull this off? And the more dangerous question, why? He didn't have answers yet, but he had a direction, and directions could be dangerous. Around noon, the executive floor summoned him again, this time via a short ping from Victoria herself. Need an update when possible. He read the message 3 times, noting the lack of formal tone. Last night's edge still lingered in the space between their words, invisible but palpable. He made his way to her office. This time her door was already open, and she was speaking quietly to someone inside. A male voice responded, smooth, authoritative, slightly irritated. "This is unnecessary, Victoria. Oversight has already approved the infrastructure. We don't need a disruptive audit right now." Darius paused. That voice belonged to Mark Reynolds, director of IT, a man whose handshake was polite but whose eyes always seemed to calculate a person's worth before deciding how hard to squeeze. Victoria's answer was crisp. "Oversight approved the old infrastructure. They did not approve the gaps I saw last week." "Gaps?" Mark scoffed. "Is that what Coleman told you?" Darius stepped into view. "Good afternoon." The room went still. Mark's expression shifted. Surprise, annoyance, and something else. Fear? Quickly masked. Victoria gestured to a chair. "Mr. Coleman, join us." Mark's eyes narrowed as Darius sat. "We were just discussing your audit." "It's not his audit," Victoria corrected. "It's mine. He's simply the one I trust to execute it." Mark forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. It's just that system-level changes can destabilize workflows, and if he misinterprets anything, it could create unnecessary panic." Darius kept his tone neutral. "I haven't misinterpreted anything yet." "Yet," Mark repeated pointedly. Victoria sliced the tension cleanly. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you. I'll handle this from here." That was not a suggestion. Mark stiffened, nodded curtly, and exited the office, brushing past Darius with a chill that clung to the air even after he was gone. "He doesn't like me," Darius said, once the door clicked shut. "He doesn't like anyone he can't control," Victoria replied. She folded her arms and studied him. "Tell me what you've found so far." Darius hesitated, choosing his words. "There are inconsistencies in the logs, small ones, but too many to be coincidence. Could it be system noise? No. Someone's altering entries. Cleanly, consistently." Her jaw tightened. "How far back?" 3 weeks. Victoria exhaled slowly, but not with surprise. With confirmation. As if she'd suspected this long before he touched the keyboard. "Show me," she said. They moved to the monitor table near the window. As he walked her through the anomalies, she listened intently, one hand pressed lightly against her forehead. When he finished, she spoke quietly. "This aligns with other problems I haven't disclosed." "Internal?" "Internal." A heavy silence settled. She turned slightly, meeting his eyes with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Mr. Coleman, this company is standing at the edge of a decision that will either elevate us or expose us, and someone inside these walls wants the latter." Darius felt a chill trace his spine. "Do you know who?" Victoria gave a soft, humorless laugh. "If I did, I wouldn't need your help." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "But understand this. Whoever is doing this is smart, strategic, and they're counting on everyone else to be too busy, too intimidated, or too biased to notice." His breath caught at the last word. Biased. She knew the unspoken dynamics of their worlds overlapped. She wasn't blind to them, and she was warning him. "This could put a target on your back," she said. "Are you prepared for that?" He didn't answer right away, but something inside him had already decided before his mind caught up. "If someone's sabotaging the company," he said quietly, "then someone needs to shine a light on it." Victoria's expression softened, not warmly, but with respect. "Good." She returned to her desk, her heels clicking lightly against the floor. "Keep digging, and for now, tell no one else." "Not even Marcus?" "No one." He nodded and left her office. By the time he reached the elevator, the weight of her warning was settling fully in his chest. A target on his back. He knew what that meant in a place like this. He knew who would be blamed first, and he knew who would be believed last. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing him into a metal box humming with potential danger. As the numbers began descending, he understood something with unsettling clarity. He was no longer repairing a broken system. He was walking into a battlefield, one where the weapons were invisible, and the first strike had already been made. Darius spent the rest of the afternoon buried in data, but the deeper he dug, the more the air around him thickened with unease. The anomalies weren't random. They formed a faint but deliberate trail. Someone was slipping in and out of system layers that required high-level clearance, leaving just enough residue to confuse anyone not looking closely, yet meticulous enough that they clearly hadn't expected someone like him to be watching. But by 4 o'clock, another pattern emerged, one that made his stomach drop. The erased logs aligned with specific project directories tied to the company's upcoming partnership deal. Every altered timestamp coincided with confidential document transfers. This wasn't sabotage for sabotage's sake. Someone was preparing for a breach, maybe even a leak. He needed more than log analysis now. He needed access to the internal communications archive, but that required physical access to the server room on level 23, a location that, to his irritation, still rested under Mark Reynolds's authority. Twice he tried to request access through the standard admin channel. Twice the request bounced back with the same red notification. Requires director override. Marcus strode over when he saw the third rejection. That's a dead end, he said. Reynolds guards that server like it's his firstborn, which means I need to get in there even more. You want my advice? Marcus leaned closer. Don't pick a fight with a man who chooses his enemies for sport. Darius kept his voice low. I'm not picking a fight. I'm doing my job. That's exactly how most fights start, Marcus muttered, before walking off. Darius stared at the screen, weighing his options. He could go back to Victoria, but she had already made it clear. Keep digging quietly, reveal nothing unless necessary. Bringing her every obstacle didn't feel like the right move, not yet, so he rose, grabbed his badge, and made his way toward level 23 anyway. If the system wouldn't let him in electronically, there was still one option, the human route. As the elevator doors opened onto the cold, sterile hallway, he saw Mark Reynolds standing near the secure server entrance with 2 team leads. The timing couldn't have been worse. Perfect, he thought grimly. Reynolds looked up, his gaze locking onto Darius with immediate suspicion. Coleman, he said, tone flat, you're a long way from your floor. I need access to the archive servers, Darius replied evenly. Miss Hale requested a full audit. Access is required to complete it. Reynolds crossed his arms. So request it through the proper channel. I did. Darius held his ground. 3 times. Something flickered in Reynolds's eyes. Annoyance, maybe fear, quickly smothered by arrogance. Then the system rejected you for a reason. Darius kept his voice calm, though a heat simmered beneath his ribs. Is that reason technical or personal? The team leads shifted uncomfortably. Reynolds stepped in closer. Listen carefully, Coleman. You don't get to question my decisions. Your support staff, a wrench turner. I run this department. Darius felt the insult land, but he didn't let it shake him. Miss Hale gave me expanded authorization herself. Then let her tell me directly, Reynolds snapped. Until I hear it from her, you're not getting anywhere near those servers. A dangerous silence settled. Darius could have pushed harder, could have mentioned the anomalies, the possibility of internal tampering. But revealing that to Reynolds felt reckless and intuitively wrong. If he was involved, it would only tip him off. So Darius did the smartest thing he could do. He stepped back. Understood, he said quietly. Have a good evening, sir. He returned to the elevator, aware of Reynolds's suspicious stare lingering on his back. The moment the doors closed, his jaw clenched. He had hit his first real wall, and the wall had teeth. Back on the IT floor, Marcus was waiting. That bad? Worse, Darius muttered. He shut me down before I got a word in. Marcus sighed. Reynolds doesn't like being bypassed. And you, well, you're about as bypassable as a sledgehammer. I don't have time for politics. Someone's manipulating system logs around a multi-million-dollar deal. Marcus's eyebrows lifted sharply. You sure? Positive. Damn, Marcus murmured. All right, then we play this smart. You need those servers? There's a maintenance window tonight. Automated cooling check. Doors unlock for 10 minutes while the system resets. And Reynolds? Won't be here. He leaves early on Tuesdays. Hope flared. Faint, but real. Can you get me the timestamp? Already sent it. The notification dinged on Darius's phone. Maintenance window. 11:10 p.m. Enough time if he moved fast. Not enough time if anything went wrong. He worked late, pretending to be absorbed in routine tasks until most of the office emptied. At 10:45 p.m., the building was quiet except for the janitorial staff and the hum of after-hours HVAC cycling through the floors. Darius grabbed his backpack, pulled up his hood, and rode the elevator down to level 23. The hallway was dimmer at night, colder. His footsteps echoed too loudly. At exactly 11 p.m., the access panel glowed green. The lock clicked open. He slipped inside. The server room's air was icy, the rows of machines humming like mechanical lungs. He moved quickly to the archive cluster, connected his drive, and began pulling the mirrored logs. The progress bar crawled, 14%, 22%, 37%. He kept glancing at the door. This wasn't illegal, but it was the kind of gray area that could end his career if someone framed it wrong. At 62%, a sound broke through the hum. Footsteps. Not janitorial. Not casual. Purposeful. Heavy. Coming straight toward the server room. Darius's pulse spiked. He tapped the drive, urging it silently to move faster. 71%. The footsteps halted outside the door. Someone swiped a badge. The panel blinked red. Invalid. They tried again. Invalid. Whoever it was, they didn't have access, which meant it wasn't Reynolds, and it wasn't Victoria. On the third attempt, the panel flashed red again. Then the footsteps retreated, not leaving, waiting. He felt it, like a presence holding its breath outside. 94%. 97%. 100%. He yanked the drive free, powered down the terminal, and slipped out the moment the system cycled the cooling fans. The hallway was empty, but someone had been there. Someone who wanted in. Someone who shouldn't have been anywhere near this floor. He didn't stop moving until he reached the elevator. When the doors closed around him, he exhaled shakily. The audit wasn't just uncovering irregularities anymore. Someone inside Hale Vision Media was hunting, searching, and now they knew someone else was searching too. He looked down at the drive in his hand. Whatever he had pulled from that server was valuable enough for someone to break protocol to get it, and dangerous enough to put a shadow on his back. The battlefield Victoria warned him about was no longer theoretical. It had found him, and it was already closing in. Darius didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in the dark, staring at the shadowed ceiling of his apartment, the portable drive sitting on the table beside him like a live wire. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the echo of those footsteps outside the server room. Not running, not retreating, waiting, watching. Whoever had tried to enter wasn't guessing. They knew what they were looking for, and they had known exactly when to look. By morning, exhaustion clung to him like a second skin, yet his mind was razor sharp with a kind of anxious clarity. He showered, threw on a clean shirt, and grabbed the drive before heading out. On the subway ride into Manhattan, every jolt of the train made the memory sharper. The badge scanner flashing red, the deliberate pacing outside the door. Someone inside Hale Vision Media was desperate to access the same data he'd pulled, desperate enough to break protocol, risk detection, and linger in the dark. He replayed the possibilities. Was it Reynolds? The thought crossed his mind, but Reynolds would have had access. Whoever it was didn't. Which narrowed the field. Someone high enough to know the servers held something valuable, but not high enough to be authorized. Someone hiding under another person's shadow, and someone who would absolutely notice the missing mirror logs this morning. As he neared the towering glass entrance of Hale Vision Media, the cold morning air sliced through him like a warning. Inside, the lobby buzzed with its usual morning energy. But there was an undercurrent, a stiffness, a tension he hadn't felt before. Conversations among staff were hushed. People glanced over their shoulders more than usual. He scanned his badge at the turnstile. Green light, no alarm. Good. Up on the IT floor, Marcus was already at his desk, but the moment he saw Darius, his expression darkened. "Something's wrong," Marcus said. No greeting, no smile, just the truth. "What happened?" Better question, what didn't happen? Marcus lowered his voice. "Reynolds has been storming around for the last half hour like someone stole his wallet. Kept asking who was on level 23 last night." Darius's breath hitched. "Did he mention my name?" "Not yet, but he will." Marcus crossed his arms. "What exactly did you get into last night?" Before Darius could answer, a chime echoed from his workstation. An email. From the Security Compliance Unit. Subject line. Meeting required. Inquiry regarding after-hours activity. Darius cursed under his breath. Marcus leaned in. You in trouble? Not yet, Darius muttered. But I might be. Before he opened the email, he slid a small encrypted folder containing the server data onto a hidden partition in his system. Then he pulled the portable drive from his bag and tucked it deep into his vest pocket. A knock startled both of them. A tall man in a gray suit, someone Darius had seen on the compliance team, stood behind him. Mr. Coleman, he said politely. Could you come with me for a moment? Marcus whispered through clenched teeth. This is bad. Darius followed the compliance officer through the maze of cubicles and into one of the small glass conference rooms. The blinds snapped shut behind them. The compliance officer, whose name tag read Wilson, took a seat across from him. Mr. Coleman, this will be brief. We're reviewing last night's server activity. There was an unauthorized presence on level 23 between 11:02 and 11:06 p.m. Were you aware of this? Darius kept his expression calm. Yes, I was on level 23 during that time. Wilson tapped a tablet. Your badge registered access. What were you doing? Performing part of the audit Miss Hale assigned to me. Wilson nodded slowly, fingers tapping. And did anyone accompany you? No. Did you see anyone else? Darius hesitated. A long, quiet breath. Wilson's eyes sharpened. Mr. Coleman? No, he lied softly. I didn't see anyone. Wilson studied him, looking for cracks in his answer. After a tense silence, he said, Very well. If additional questions arise, we'll contact you. As they exited, Darius felt sweat form at the base of his neck, not from guilt, but from the quiet confirmation that someone inside this company was maneuvering behind the scenes faster than he could track them. Back at his desk, Marcus leaned in. Well, they don't know who it was, Darius murmured, but they know someone was there. Besides you? Yeah, and you're not telling them. Not until I know who it was. Marcus nodded. Smart or stupid? Hard to tell sometimes. Darius opened the encrypted log files, scrolling through the mirrored records he'd pulled, and there it was, what he was afraid to find. Dozens of unauthorized file accesses, confidential documents duplicated, transferred, deleted. But the most alarming part wasn't the activity. It was the identity attached to the cloned credentials used to do it. The logs pointed to a single user, a high-ranking one whose access had been silently shadowed for weeks. Reynolds. It couldn't be clearer. Someone had been using his digital identity, or Reynolds himself was doing it, but the clone credential trails were too careful, too sophisticated, more like someone framing him than protecting themselves. Darius leaned back, running his hand over his face. What is it? Marcus asked. A problem, Darius whispered. A big one. A ping sounded on his phone. A message from Victoria. Need to speak. Now. He left, immediately. When he reached her office, the tension in the hallway was thicker than before. Her assistant didn't even look up, just gestured him in. Victoria stood near the window, arms folded, jaw tight. She didn't waste time. Someone filed an anonymous complaint this morning, she said. You were accused of accessing restricted servers without authorization. A cold wave slid down his spine. I was performing the audit, I know, she said. But someone is trying to discredit you before you uncover something they want hidden. His pulse quickened. Did you tell compliance to stand down? For now. Her eyes locked onto his with unsettling intensity. But listen to me carefully, Mr. Coleman. You need to be more careful than ever. Whoever's behind this is watching your every move. He swallowed. I think Reynolds is being framed, he said quietly, or he's the one doing the framing. Victoria's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened. Show me. He handed her his tablet, and she studied the cloned log entries, her brows tightening with each passing line. When she finished, She exhaled once slow, deliberate. "This isn't just a leak," she said. "This is coordinated." He nodded. "And whoever was outside that server room last night—" He stopped when she looked up sharply. "You didn't mention that earlier. I didn't have proof. Only footsteps. But someone was there." "Yes." A moment of silence fell between them, a heavy, dangerous understanding settling in the room like dust. "Mr. Coleman," she said finally, her voice low, "whatever we uncover next won't just threaten jobs. It may threaten reputations, deals, and people who don't tolerate being exposed." "I know." She stepped closer, her voice dropping even lower. "Do not trust anyone but me." Darius left her office with a weight in his chest that felt like both a warning and a vow. The deeper he dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't a simple audit. It was a war fought in silence, behind screens and in hallways, with shadows wearing the faces of colleagues, and now the shadows knew his name. Darius spent the rest of the morning pretending to work while every nerve in his body remained alert, scanning for danger the way a soldier listens for the faintest shift in wind. Even the soft hum of the overhead lights seemed sharper today, as if the building itself were holding its breath. He replayed Victoria's words from earlier. "Do not trust anyone but me," and they settled over him like both a shield and a burden. At noon, the IT floor was nearly empty. Most people out grabbing lunch or lingering in the hallway discussing weekend plans. But Darius stayed at his desk, headphones around his neck but not playing anything, eyes fixed on the logs he'd copied from the server room. He wasn't analyzing them now. He had already done that. Instead, he was studying the gaps. The places where the logs should have shown transitions between credentials, the moments where the system went strangely silent. Silence, he'd learned long ago, was often where the truth lived. "You're working through lunch?" Marcus asked, dropping a sandwich on Darius's desk. "Eat. You look like a man who hasn't slept in a month." Darius forced a thin smile. "I'm fine," Marcus scoffed. "People only say, 'I'm fine,' when they're not fine at all." "What's going on?" Darius hesitated. He trusted Marcus Orr as much as anyone could trust someone in an environment where every conversation might be echoed back to the wrong person. But Victoria's warning still rang in his ears. For now, he kept the truth guarded. "It's just the audit. Bigger than I expected." "Bigger audits mean bigger problems," Marcus muttered. Then he lowered his voice. "Reynolds is looking for someone to blame. Watch your step." Darius nodded, and Marcus walked away, leaving him alone again with the logs, the silence, and a growing sense of inevitability. Around 1 o'clock, a corporate-wide notification flashed across every monitor. "Mandatory all staff. Town Hall. 4 p.m. Executive leadership to address operational updates." The message sent a ripple through the office. Town halls weren't unusual but urgent. Same-day ones were. And Victoria, he suspected, didn't call last-minute town halls unless she felt pressure, heavy pressure, from someone, from something. His phone vibrated. A new message from an unknown internal extension appeared. "Be careful, they're watching you." His heart lurched. He glanced around the IT floor. No one was looking at him. No one looked suspicious. No one looked guilty. But that didn't mean anything. Anyone could hide behind a monitor and a false sense of normalcy. He slipped the phone into his pocket and stood, unable to sit still. He needed air, fresh oxygen, a moment where the walls of the building didn't feel like eyes. He took the elevator down to the lobby, stepping out into the swirl of people and noise tourists, examining the modern art installation, workers from other companies grabbing coffee, security scanning badges. For a moment, the normalcy felt almost soothing. Almost. Then he noticed a man near the window staring at him. Not accidentally, not vaguely, directly. A man in a charcoal suit, unfamiliar, with the flat, calculating expression of someone who was paid to gather information, not give it. When Darius turned to face him fully, the man looked away, but not fast enough to hide the truth. He had been watching. Darius's jaw tightened. He turned and walked back toward the elevator. refusing to let adrenaline drive him into paranoia. Still, when he stepped into the elevator car, he was relieved to be alone. Or so he thought. Just as the doors were closing, a hand slid between them. The doors reopened, and to his surprise and confusion, Victoria stepped in. She looked composed but tense, her movements sharp, focused. "Mr. Coleman," she greeted, voice quiet but edged with urgency. "I was looking for you." His pulse kicked. "Is something wrong?" "Everything is wrong," she replied, then quickly added, "but we need to be smart about how we handle it." She pressed the button for a lower executive floor one rarely used. The elevator descended. "Someone inside the company knows you accessed the archived logs," she continued softly. "And they're escalating." "I know. Compliance questioned me." "Not just compliance." She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I received a message suggesting your name might soon be tied to suspicious activity." Anonymous, but pointed. A weight dropped through his stomach. "They're trying to frame me." "Yes," she said. "No hesitation, no uncertainty. And they're doing it because you're close to uncovering something that terrifies them." The elevator dinged softly, the doors sliding open onto a dim, quiet hallway of unused executive suites. She stepped out and gestured for him to follow. "Come with me. We can talk safely here." They entered an empty office, the lights flickering on automatically. Victoria closed the door behind them. "Show me everything you found." Darius connected his drive to the small conference table's monitor. The mirror logs flashed onto the screen. Unauthorized accesses, timestamp manipulation, credential shadowing, evidence of a carefully orchestrated cover-up. As she skimmed the files, her face tightened. "This aligns with several discrepancies in financial projections I've been questioning." "Someone's preparing for a leak," Darius said. "Or a takeover," she murmured. He frowned. "A takeover?" Victoria inhaled slowly, as if steeling herself. "This partnership deal we're pursuing, if someone sabotages us, even discreetly, the company's value drops. Someone benefits from that." The truth clicked into place. "Stock manipulation." She nodded once. A silent collapse, executed from within. Darius's thoughts churned. Reynolds's credentials were used, but it's too clean. Either he's being framed, or he's involved. And both possibilities are dangerous, she said. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then locked the screen without responding. Her expression shifted tight, worried, calculating. "For your safety, you need to limit your movements. Don't stay on one floor too long. Don't make predictable patterns. And don't walk alone at night. Is it that serious?" "Yes," she whispered. "People who manipulate markets don't hesitate before destroying lives." He felt a cold weight settle under his ribs. Why involve me at all? For the first time since the elevator, her expression softened, just slightly. "Because you're the only one who saw the truth without being asked. And because you don't look away when something feels wrong." For a moment, the tension between them shifted into something less sharp, something human. But then she straightened, back in CEO mode. "Be prepared for the town hall," she said. "I'll be under scrutiny today." "And so will you." He nodded, gathering his things. As they left the unused suite and re-entered the elevator, he felt the faintest tremor of danger humming beneath the floor. When the elevator doors opened, the charcoal-suited man from the lobby stood down the hallway, pretending to check a directory map. Victoria noticed. She leaned in slightly toward Darius and whispered without looking at him, "Do not react." He didn't. He walked calmly beside her until they reached the intersection of corridors. Then she spoke under her breath. "They're tracking you." His pulse hammered. "What do I do?" "You keep working," she whispered. "And you stay alive until we expose them." He turned to look at her, really look at her. The polished veneer, the steely composure, the quiet fear she masked with authority. And he realized that whatever battlefield he had stepped onto, she was standing on it too. And neither of them could walk away now. Darius returned to the IT floor with the sensation of being followed, clinging to his skin like static electricity. The charcoal-suited man's gaze still lingered in his mind, calculating, patient, predatory. It was the look of someone who didn't need to rush because he already knew where his target would eventually be. Back at his desk, the lights felt too bright, the open floor too exposed. He sat down slowly, positioning himself so he could see the hallway in the reflection of his dark monitor screen. Marcus noticed instantly. "You look like you just saw a ghost," he muttered, sliding into the chair beside him with a bag of chips. Which is impressive, because ghosts don't like corporate offices. Too much paperwork. Normally, Darius might have cracked a smile, but not today. "Marcus, did you see anyone watching me earlier?" Marcus paused mid-crunch. "Watching you? No. Should I have?" There was a man in the lobby. And again on an executive floor. Marcus's expression changed, still joking on the surface, but his eyes sharpened. "Describe him." Darius did. Marcus's face paled slightly. "That sounds like one of the private security contractors. Not building security private." That hit hard. Private security didn't monitor the building. They monitored people. Why would private security be following me? Why do people flush the toilet 3 times? Marcus shrugged. Either paranoia, or they did something they're afraid will come back to bite them. Before Darius could respond, another notification lit his screen, an internal calendar alert. The town hall was in an hour. He stared at it, feeling a tightening in his chest. Town halls were usually corporate theater, but today, every instinct in him said something was about to break. He clicked back into the logs, forcing himself to focus. The mirror files from the server room contained something he hadn't noticed earlier. A repeated access attempt originating not from internal devices but from a remote, encrypted endpoint. It was buried beneath layers of system noise, but still traceable. Someone outside the building had been trying to retrieve the same files he now held. This wasn't just internal sabotage. There was someone on the outside waiting for the inside to crumble. He quickly encrypted the folder again and hid it in a disguised directory labeled with an old maintenance tag. The kind of file no one would ever click unless they were desperate to bore themselves to death. Just as he finished, Marcus leaned closer. "Hey," he whispered, "Reynolds is coming." Darius stiffened. Mark Reynolds appeared in the doorway like a storm cloud, tight-lipped, eyes sharp, jaw clenched. He scanned the department, but the moment his gaze landed on Darius, it narrowed to a thin, icy blade. He walked over with deliberate slowness. "Coleman." "A word," Marcus muttered. "Oh, hell," but stayed seated. Darius rose and followed Reynolds into the glass meeting room by the elevators. Reynolds closed the door but didn't sit down. "I want to make something very clear," he said, voice cold and clipped. "Your presence on level 23 last night has caused disruptions. Compliance may have let it slide, but I won't." "I was performing the audit I was assigned," Darius replied evenly. "You circumvented protocol. Protocol wouldn't allow the audit to be completed." Reynolds stepped closer. "And since when do you decide what's allowed in my department?" The emphasis on "you" wasn't subtle, not even a little. Darius met his gaze without flinching. "I'm following orders from Miss Hale." Reynolds's jaw ticked. "Miss Hale doesn't understand the technical layers here. I do. If she thinks there's a problem, she comes to me. Not to support staff. Support staff." There it was, the quiet corporate insult that lived in the air like dust. Darius kept his expression calm. "If you want to speak with her about it, you should." Reynolds's eyes flashed, not anger, but fear. Just for half a second. Then he smoothed it over, his voice going low. "Stay in your lane, Coleman. You're already drawing attention you can't survive." Without waiting for a response, he walked out. The threat lingered in the air like poison. When Darius returned to his desk, Marcus whispered, "That man is sweating. You know what people do when they're sweating? They look for someone else to blame." "He already found me," Darius muttered. "Then you better get ahead of him." The clock struck 4. Staff from every department began filing toward the auditorium for the town hall. Darius walked among them, feeling the weight of every look, every whisper. He took a seat near the back, close to the exit. Habit. The room buzzed with low murmurs. Then the lights dimmed. Victoria Hale stepped on stage. Every conversation died instantly. She looked composed, polished, unshakable, exactly the image she needed to project. Yet Darius, watching her closely, saw the tension beneath her posture, the same tension he had felt in the elevator. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began, her voice calm but edged with steel. "We are entering a critical phase in our strategic partnership. As such, it's important that we operate with transparency, accuracy, and responsibility," she continued, outlining the company's goals, the expectations for collaboration, and the need for heightened security protocols. But halfway through the presentation, the auditorium screens flickered, glitched. Once. Twice. Then an error code flashed across every screen, one that Darius recognized instantly. Unauthorized external attempt detected. Someone was trying to breach the company's live feed. In the middle of a town hall, gasps echoed through the room. Victoria stiffened. Her eyes flicked toward the technical team, who scrambled to stabilize the system. But the damage was already done. Someone wanted the entire company to see that the system was compromised, that leadership wasn't in control, and that whoever was responsible for the internal tampering had just escalated. The screens blinked back to normal a few seconds later, but the room felt different now, restless, anxious, cracking at the edges. Darius's phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "You're too late." His skin went cold. He looked up just in time to see Victoria scanning the audience. Her gaze locked onto his for a single, piercing second, and he knew she had received the same message. Or worse, she steadied herself and continued, but the confidence was now layered with urgency. "We will address today's technical interruption internally. Rest assured, we have the right people on it." The room shifted, heads turning, eyes landing on the IT staff seated throughout the aisles. Some sympathetic, others suspicious. A few openly irritated. When the town hall ended, people rose in clusters, buzzing with speculation. Darius remained seated until the room thinned. Then, quietly, he stood. The man in the charcoal suit was in the back row, watching him again. This time, when their eyes met, the man didn't look away. He smiled, just barely. And in that small, calculated smile, Darius understood one thing with absolute clarity. The war wasn't coming. It was already here. When the town hall cleared, Darius waited in the dim auditorium until the last voices faded down the hallway. Only then did he rise from his seat, his pulse still unsettled by the encrypted message, "You're too late," and the unsettling smile of the man in the charcoal suit. He stepped into the hallway, keeping his movements steady, controlled. The energy throughout the building had changed. Even the air felt heavier, as though the interruption in the presentation had shaken the company's core. Employees whispered in small clusters. Some cast anxious glances toward the executive wing. Others eyed the IT staff with suspicion, as if a technical glitch were proof of incompetence or betrayal. Darius ignored all of them. His focus was on one thing: finding out what had triggered the external breach during the town hall. He returned to the IT floor and sat at his workstation, pulling up the system monitor dashboard. Live security feeds scrolled past, each one showing failed connection attempts time-stamped during the presentation. The attacks had been synchronized, coordinated, and brief, almost too brief. A test run, he realized. Not an attack. A warning. Marcus appeared at his desk without a sound, dropping into the chair beside him. "So," he said in a low voice, "are we all doomed or just halfway doomed?" "Depends," Darius muttered, eyes fixed on the cascading logs. "On what? On how fast we find whoever did this, or how fast they find you," Marcus said. It was meant as a joke, mostly. But Darius didn't respond. He scrolled deeper into the logs, watching as encrypted packets traced back to proxy nodes scattered across countries. "Someone masked their trail pretty well," he murmured. "Professional grade," Marcus snorted. "Fantastic. We're being sabotaged by a genius. Love that for us." A chime sounded from the overhead speakers. "Attention," a calm voice announced. "All department heads report to the executive conference suite immediately." Marcus raised his eyebrows. When management starts meeting this often, someone's about to either get fired or get blamed. "Maybe both," Darius said. He continued working while the floor emptied around them. Soon the IT department felt like a ghost town, quiet except for the dull hum of machines and the occasional squeak of a rolling chair. He finally decrypted a packet long enough to identify a partial signature from the intrusion. His eyes widened. A fingerprint, not a literal one, but a digital pattern he'd seen before. It matched the shadowed credentials he had discovered in the archive logs, meaning the internal manipulator and the external intruder were connected, maybe identical, maybe partners. He leaned in, studying the data, when a soft vibration buzzed in his pocket. A message. It wasn't from Victoria this time. It was from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Your window is closing." He stared at the words, heat rising under his skin. Marcus, seeing his expression, leaned over. "What now?" Darius slid the phone away. "Nothing. Don't lie," Marcus said. "You're terrible at it." Darius sighed. "Someone's trying to scare me off. Is it working?" "No." Marcus gave him a long, level look. "Then be careful. Fear is loud, but danger is quiet." Before Darius could respond, another system alert blinked on his screen. Access blocked. His administrative permissions, the ones Victoria personally granted, had been restricted, disabled. A rush of ice shot through him. Someone inside the building had reversed his access, someone with higher clearance. Only a handful of people could override a CEO-issued authorization. Mark Reynolds was one of them. Almost on cue, a shadow fell across his desk. "Reynolds." "Coleman," he said, voice deceptively calm. "I need you to come with me." Marcus stiffened. "Why?" he asked before Darius could speak. Reynolds barely looked at him. "This doesn't concern you." Darius stood, every instinct screaming caution. "What's this about?" "Compliance wants a deeper review of your access footprint," Reynolds replied. "We need to clear something up." It was a lie. They both knew it. Reynolds didn't wait for agreement. He simply turned and walked toward the elevator, expecting Darius to follow. Marcus mouthed, "Don't go." But Darius shook his head. He had no choice. He stepped into the elevator. Reynolds pressed the button for level 31, the floor with the executive compliance office. The elevator rose, humming softly. The corridor visible through the glass panel shrank beneath them. Reynolds stood with his hands behind his back, expression smooth but his jaw tight with something that looked a lot like panic disguised as superiority. "You've been busy, Coleman," he said. "Too busy. Just doing the job Miss Hale gave me. You exceeded your responsibilities. If the system wasn't being tampered with, I wouldn't have needed to." Reynolds' eyes snapped toward him, sharp as a blade. "Watch yourself." The elevator doors opened into a stark, quiet hallway. Compliance was down one direction, but Reynolds walked the opposite way, toward an unused wing of the building. The hair on the back of Darius's neck rose. "Where are we going?" "A quiet room. To talk. I thought compliance wanted to see me." "They will." Reynolds's tone sharpened. "After you and I clear the air. A quiet room. Away from cameras. Away from witnesses." Darius's instincts flared. He slowed his steps. "I'm not going anywhere without an official request." Reynolds turned, eyes narrowing. "You don't give orders here. And neither do you," a voice said sharply from behind them. "Victoria." She strode down the hallway with a force that cut through the tension like a spotlight. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, her posture a warning wrapped in elegance. Reynolds stiffened. "Miss Hale, I was just interfering with my audit," Victoria said coldly. Again, she stepped beside Darius without looking at him, placing herself physically between him and Reynolds. "Mr. Coleman's whereabouts are under my direct authority. If compliance needs him, they go through me." Reynolds swallowed. The company," she interrupted, voice icy. needs transparency. What it does not need is intimidation. Darius saw the flicker of anger in Reynolds's eyes, anger mixed with fear. "We'll talk later," Reynolds muttered before retreating toward the elevator. When he disappeared behind the closing doors, Victoria exhaled once, grounding herself. Then she turned to Darius. "Are you all right?" He nodded. "He disabled my access." "I know," she said. "I just reinstated it." She started walking, gesturing for him to follow. "There's more." They entered an empty conference room. She closed the door quietly. "While the town hall was happening, someone made a move on my personal terminal. A breach attempt." Darius's pulse jumped. "Did they get anything?" "No, but they tried." She tapped her tablet, bringing up a screen that showed the attempted intrusion. The signature matched the same fingerprint he'd discovered. He pointed at it. "That's the same pattern I found earlier." "Yes." Her eyes darkened. "Which means this isn't just someone trying to undermine the company. It's someone trying to undermine you," he said quietly. She met his eyes. The fear was subtle, buried deep, but unmistakable. "We're running out of time," she whispered. "They're escalating." "Then we escalate too," Darius said. "Whatever they're planning, we need to uncover it before they make their next move." Victoria looked at him with something like trust, real trust. "Then let's get back to work." They left the room together. Neither noticed the man in the charcoal suit watching from the far end of the hallway, a small earpiece gleaming beneath his hair as he murmured quietly into it. "They're moving," he said. "Prepare the next step." The rest of the afternoon unfolded like a tightening wire. Every hour felt shorter than it should, every sound sharper. Darius and Victoria worked in shadows, moving between restricted terminals, scanning mirrored directories, stitching together fragments of a scheme none of the official channels seemed able or willing to see. By early evening, employees filtered out of the building until the workspace felt hollow. Only a handful of cleaners walked the corridors with rolling carts, their soft footsteps echoing like whispers. It was the safest time for digging, and the most dangerous. Victoria had arranged for a small executive suite to remain unlocked. One she claimed was under maintenance. They slipped inside just after 6, and she locked the door. A single desk lamp illuminated the room, casting them in warm pools of light surrounded by darkness. "All right," she said quietly, setting her tablet on the table. "Show me the deeper layers." Darius connected his drive and brought up the logs, the raw ones, not the cleaned-up versions. Victoria leaned in, her expression sharpening as she studied the strings of data. "This code sequence," she murmured, pointing to a repeated, spiraling pattern, "doesn't look like typical manipulation." "It isn't," Darius agreed. "It's camouflage. Whoever wrote this wanted any trace of their entry to blend into natural system processes. Most analysts wouldn't notice, but you did." Her eyes flicked toward him, a quick, precise acknowledgement. He didn't answer. He kept scrolling, revealing spikes in credential cloning, several of which had been routed through Reynolds's identity. "Look here," he said softly. "This manipulation path, someone accessed internal valuation data 3 nights ago. Not the public-facing reports, the classified projections." Victoria's jaw tightened. "That's the data that determines our negotiation stance." "Exactly. If it's altered, the partnership deal collapses," she finished. "We'd lose billions in projected revenue, and someone would buy our shares during the fallout." She exhaled, a slow, controlled breath. "Stock manipulation. On a massive scale," he added. She leaned back, pinching the bridge of her nose. "I've suspected internal conflict for months, but this is orchestrated. Who has access to the financial projections besides you?" 2 finance VPs, legal counsel, and... She stopped. He waited. "And the board," she said reluctantly. Darius's heartbeat slowed. "One of them? Or someone working for one of them?" She stared into the dim corner of the room as if trying to pull the culprit out of the shadows. "People at that level don't get their hands dirty. They hire others to do it, or they threaten others into compliance. Reynolds? Possibly, but he's too impulsive for something this delicate. Darius hesitated. Whoever is behind this, they're close to you. Her gaze sharpened. What makes you say that? He turned the screen to show the breach attempt on her personal terminal. This wasn't random. They wanted your files, your notes, your reports. They weren't targeting the company. They were targeting you. Silence settled between them, heavy and personal. She didn't speak for several seconds. When she finally did, her voice was quieter. Someone once told me the higher you climb, the more invisible knives you find pointed at your back. Darius said nothing. He couldn't tell whether she meant it figuratively or from experience. Suddenly, her tablet buzzed sharply. A notification flashed across the screen. A live alert from building operations. Door override detected. Level 31. Executive Suet Wing. Her eyes shot to his. That's this floor. Darius moved quickly, killing the monitor display. The room plunged back into its dim half-darkness. Victoria grabbed the tablet, muting all notifications. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, unhurried, confident. Darius felt his pulse rise in his throat. Victoria moved to the light switch and flicked it off. The office fell into shadow. Only the faint sliver of hallway light bled beneath the door. More footsteps, and then soft voices. One male, one female. They were speaking quietly. But the acoustics of the hall allowed fragments through the door. Check each room. She's still in the building. Coleman, too. Find him. Victoria's hand brushed his arm in the dark, steadying herself, or maybe steadying both of them. They stood perfectly still, breaths shallow. A hand pressed against the suite's door. The handle turned slowly, quietly, testing. Dizziness washed over Darius, not from fear but from pure, sharpened calculation. The person on the other side didn't want to announce themselves, which meant they weren't here to talk. The handle released. Footsteps moved away. One set, then a second. They were checking the next room. Victoria exhaled, barely audible. They're searching for us. Why? Because someone inside knows we're close. Close to what? Her whisper cracked slightly. Close enough to be a threat. He swallowed. We need to move. Quietly. They waited until the footsteps faded down the hall, then slipped into the corridor. The air felt sharper, colder. Victoria clicked off her heels and carried them in her hand as they walked quietly toward the elevator bank. Darius pressed the call button. Nothing happened. He pressed again. Another alert flashed on Victoria's tablet. Elevator access restricted. Executive floors. They locked us in, he muttered. Victoria didn't panic. Stairs. They moved to the stairwell door. Locked. Another override. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't improvising. They were executing. Victoria's voice was steady. We can't stay here, I know. He scanned the hallway, looking for blind spots in the camera layout. The cameras on this floor rotated every 8 seconds, leaving a narrow dead zone near the far corner. Follow me, he whispered. They darted to the dead zone, pressing their backs to the wall. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzzed, casting harsh white lines across the carpet. Footsteps sounded again, closer, this time heavier. The charcoal-suited man rounded the corner. He was alone. And he was walking directly toward them. Victoria tensed beside him. There was no door to duck into, no corner sharp enough to conceal them. The man's stride was calm, assured, too assured. He reached into his jacket, not for a gun, Darius hoped, but for something, a phone, an ID, a device. He couldn't tell. Stay behind me, Darius whispered. Victoria didn't argue. The man approached, footsteps steady, expression blank and focused. When he was only 10 feet away, he finally spoke, voice low and smooth. Miss Hale, Mr. Coleman, you need to come with me. Darius straightened. Under whose authority? The man smiled the smallest, coldest smile, the one that decides what happens next. Victoria's breath hitched. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. Whoever sent this man wasn't a stranger to her, and that, Darius realized, was far more dangerous than anything he had imagined so far. The hallway felt too narrow, the air too thin. The man in the charcoal suit stood no more than a few strides away, his calm presence more threatening than if he'd pulled a weapon. Victoria's breath steadied, not out of fear, but calculation. She knew this man. Darius saw it in the exact way her posture shifted, the faint tightening around her eyes, the coldness threading into her voice when she finally spoke. "Who sent you?" The man smiled, not warm, not friendly, just efficient. Someone who prefers to remain unnamed. Someone who believes this conversation would be more productive elsewhere. "Conversation?" Darius repeated, keeping his voice low. "Because this feels more like abduction. Only if you refuse to cooperate," the man replied, tone polite in a way that made the threat sharper. "If you come with me, this stays internal. If you resist, it becomes complicated." He slipped a hand into his jacket, and for a heartbeat Darius tensed, ready to move. But the man withdrew nothing more than a small executive badge, its color platinum, the highest level, reserved for board members and their direct operatives. Victoria's jaw clenched. "Board security," she murmured. The man tilted his head. "You catch on quickly." Darius stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the man's view of her body. "You're not taking her anywhere." The operative's smile didn't move, but something in his eyes hardened. "Mr. Coleman, you're out of your depth. This is board-level business. Miss Hale knows exactly why I'm here." Victoria didn't deny it. She simply said, "I'm not going anywhere without clarification. Clarification will be provided in a controlled environment, meaning a room you choose," Darius said, "with no cameras, no witnesses." The man didn't respond, but silence was response enough. Victoria exhaled, and the steel in her voice sharpened. "I answer to the board when they request a meeting, not when they send muscle, and yet," the man said softly, "you and Mr. Coleman have been accessing restricted data. The board is concerned. They'd like to know why." Darius felt a flicker of anger. "Because someone inside this building is manipulating." Victoria touched his arm, just a brush of her fingers. A warning, don't reveal anything. The man watched the exchange with faint amusement. "Let's not complicate this. Miss Hale, you will come with me. Mr. Coleman, you will return to your department." "No," Victoria said. "He comes with me." The man's smile faded. "That is not an option." Her chin lifted slightly. "It is now." The operative stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Defiance is a poor strategy, Miss Hale. You're already in a precarious position." "Because someone wants me there," she countered. "Don't pretend this is protocol." Darius sensed the moment's spiraling escalation tightening like a coil. He leaned toward her, whispering so low only she could hear, "We need to move. Now." She nodded imperceptibly. The man in the suit misinterpreted the gesture as compliance. He relaxed one fraction, one fatal fraction. It was all Darius needed. "Run," he whispered. Then he moved. He shoved a shoulder into the operative, knocking him off balance just long enough for Victoria to break into a sprint. Her bare feet gripped the carpet silently as she bolted down the hallway. Darius followed, adrenaline burning through every nerve. The man recovered quickly, too quickly, and lunged after them. "Stop!" His voice echoed off the walls. They didn't stop. Not even close. Victoria darted into a side hallway toward the stairwell access. The panel read, "Locked." Her fingers hammered the keypad. "Override!" she hissed. Darius swiped his badge. Red light. The man was closing in. "Move!" Darius threw his shoulder into the door once, twice metal groaning until the lock finally cracked under the force. The door flew open. They stumbled inside and slammed it shut behind them. Heavy footsteps hit the other side a second later. Victoria grabbed the railing. "Down or up?" she gasped. "Down," Darius said. "Too many executives above us." They ran. Flight after flight. Level 30, level 29. level 28, each floor number flashing past like a countdown. Then, a door above slammed open. The man entered the stairwell. His footsteps thundered down after them. "He's fast," Victoria whispered. "So are we," Darius replied. They reached level 26. He shoved the door open, pulling her through. The hallway was dim, half under renovation. Plastic sheets rustled along the walls. Construction tools lay scattered. It was a dead zone, exactly what they needed. Darius pulled Victoria behind a plastic partition. They pressed against the wall as the stairwell door burst open behind them. The operative stepped out, silent as a predator. He scanned the hallway slowly. The dust sheets moved with the ventilation, making faint whispering sounds. The man walked forward, each step precise. Darius felt Victoria's breath brush his shoulder, rapid, quiet. The operative passed within 6 feet of them. Then he stopped. "You can't hide forever," he said calmly. He turned and walked farther down the hall. The moment he disappeared around a corner, Darius tugged Victoria in the opposite direction, toward the freight elevator at the far end. "Maintenance access," he said. "Lower floors won't be locked." She nodded and followed. They reached the freight elevator. Darius hit the call button. "Nothing. System lock," Victoria whispered. "They're controlling everything." Then we use the maintenance hatch. He pried open the outer gate. A ladder descended into darkness. She hesitated only a second before climbing in. He followed, pulling the gate closed behind them. They climbed 2 levels down and emerged into the basement hallway, concrete floors, humming pipes, dim lights flickering overhead. Safe for now. Victoria braced herself against the wall, catching her breath. "They're not just watching us," she said. "They're corralling us." "Because we're close," Darius replied. "Close to proving who's behind this." She looked at him, really looked at him. "You didn't have to protect me back there. You didn't have to protect me these last few days," he countered. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but thought better of it. Instead, she straightened. "We need a secure place to work, and new devices. Everything in the building is compromised." "I know somewhere," Darius said. "It's not fancy, but it's safe." "Your apartment?" He shook his head. "Too obvious. They'll check it. They'll check yours too." She exhaled. "Then where?" He thought for a moment, then a memory surfaced. Quiet, dusty, forgotten. "There's an old sub-level archive room from the merger 10 years ago. Nobody uses it. Half the company doesn't even know it exists. And it's off the network." Victoria's eyes sharpened with hope. "Show me." They made their way deeper underground, passing old mechanical rooms, unused storage spaces, abandoned server closets. The building felt different down here, older, less polished, a place people forgot. When they reached the old archive room, Darius pulled open the heavy door. Inside, the air smelled like paper and time. Dust motes drifted through the glow of a single flickering bulb. It was quiet, secluded, off-grid. "Perfect," Victoria whispered. "We work here." They stepped inside. Neither of them noticed the faint red light blinking high in the corner until it flickered once, then went still. A tiny sensor, a motion-activated trigger, and somewhere above them, in a dark control room, the charcoal-suited man watched a small monitor flick to life. "Found them," he murmured. "Initiate Phase 2. The archive room felt like a cavern, swallowed by time, dim, silent, and sealed off from the polished world above. Rows of forgotten filing cabinets stood like metal tombstones, each drawer filled with relics of mergers and decisions nobody remembered anymore. Only the flicker of an old bulb broke the darkness, a weak pulse of yellow light that cast long shadows across the concrete floor. Darius and Victoria stood in the center of the room, both catching their breath, both listening for footsteps they prayed would not come. When none did, Victoria finally spoke. "We have to move quickly." Her voice was steady, but it held a buried strain he hadn't heard before. Not fear, exactly, but urgency sharpened into something fragile. Darius nodded. "Let's set up." He pulled a dusty metal table away from the wall, brushing off cobwebs and old paper remnants. Victoria opened her laptop, a machine she kept separate from the company's primary network. "This one isn't connected to anything," she said. "Air-gapped. Safer." "Good," he murmured. He connected his own offline device and inserted the portable drive. The files appeared instantly: mirrored logs, access patterns, anomalies, and the fingerprints of someone intent on taking down the entire company. Victoria leaned over his shoulder. The dim light cast a soft glow on her hair, her features sharp but thoughtful. "Pull up the sequences from yesterday's breach attempts." He did. Lines of code streamed across the screen, encrypted, fragmented, but traceable. She studied them with narrowed eyes. "That's not clean work," someone rushed. "Yes," he agreed. "They're getting nervous. Or confident," she countered. "Bold enough to attack during a town hall." That wasn't sabotage. It was humiliation. "A message." Darius frowned. "To you?" "To the entire company," she murmured. "To remind everyone that control is an illusion." Silence stretched between them. Then Darius opened the cloned credentials again, the ones that pointed to Reynolds. "Look," he said, highlighting a block of data. "The intruder keeps routing through Reynolds's identity, but the patterns aren't identical. These are ghost signatures, fabricated echoes to make it look like him. So he's being framed, or he's working with someone more skilled than he is," Darius said quietly. Victoria considered this, then her expression hardened. "Either way, the board will see his name and panic, unless we show them the real source." Her eyes lifted to his. "Can we?" "Maybe," he said, "if I can isolate the originating endpoint." "Do it." He began typing, isolating patterns, stripping away masking layers. It was like peeling paint off a surface, only to find another layer underneath deception built upon deception. Minutes stretched. Then an address flickered. Not a full origin, but a partial one. Victoria leaned closer. Her breath caught. "That's subnet. It belongs to one of the board members." Darius froze. "Which one?" She stepped back, running a hand through her hair. "There are 3 who use that range, but only one with motive." "Who?" Her answer was quiet and heavy. "William Harrow." Darius recognized the name instantly. Board member for 20 years, known for his ruthlessness, rumored to have engineered more hostile takeovers than any other executive in the city. "Why target you?" he asked. Victoria hesitated. "Because I blocked him 6 months ago. He tried to push through a partnership with a competitor, a predatory deal that would have gutted workforce protections. I refused. So now he wants you out of the way. He wants the company cheap," she corrected. "And he wants someone to blame for its collapse. Someone visible." Her gaze met his. "Someone like me." Darius swallowed. "And me?" "You're the variable," she said quietly. The one he didn't anticipate. They fell silent again. Darius's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He felt the weight of everything closing around them. Corporate predators, false accusations, shadow operatives, and above all, the man in the charcoal suit moving through the building like a ghost carrying someone else's orders. "We need evidence strong enough to expose Harrow," Victoria said. "Something the board can't ignore." "These logs might not be enough," Darius warned. "He'll call them fabricated. Then we need more." She turned, scanning the old archive shelves as if searching for an idea in the dust. "What else does the system record?" Darius froze. Then slowly, a realization dawned. Camera metadata. She faced him. "Explain." "Even if someone erased the footage, the system still logs when a camera is disabled or overridden, and those overrides are tied to physical badge movements at the time. So if Harrow's operative was here, there will be a trace," Darius finished, "even if it's just residual." Victoria's eyes sharpened with purpose. "Then pull it." He accessed the deepest layer of the mirrored files building infrastructure logs. They were enormous, thousands of entries per hour, but he filtered by anomalous camera activity. There, a cluster of overrides, and each timestamp matched a badge ping from one unknown user, an identity shielded behind a platinum-level authorization. Victoria stared at the screen, voice tight. That has to be Harrow's operative. The man following us. Yes, she whispered. And if we can connect that badge to his orders, we can expose him and stop this before he destroys everything. For a moment, they stood side by side in the dim room, united by purpose and by the shadow of danger pressing closer with every passing second. Then a sound broke the quiet, a soft hum, a click, not from the room, from the hallway. Victoria stiffened. Darius turned toward the door. A faint red glow blinked in the top corner of the room. The sensor. He cursed under his breath. They found us. The hum grew louder. Footsteps. More than one pair this time. Slow, controlled, surrounding the room. Victoria closed the laptop. Her voice was barely a whisper. What do we do? Darius scanned the room, old shelves, dusty boxes, a half-broken ventilation grate. And then he saw it. A second door. Not a real exit, just an old maintenance passage used decades ago. This way, he said, grabbing her hand. She didn't hesitate. They ran toward the passage just as a voice outside spoke calmly through a radio. They're inside. Move in. Victoria's grip tightened around Darius's hand. We're running out of places to hide. Then we stop hiding, he said. But not tonight. The maintenance door creaked open. They slipped inside. Darkness swallowed them whole. Behind them, the archive door began to open, and the hunt escalated into something far more dangerous than before. The maintenance passage swallowed them in a narrow darkness, so complete that Victoria's breath echoed softly against the metal walls. Darius shut the old door behind them just as the archive room erupted in noise boots, hitting concrete. Drawers pulled open, voices calling out commands. They're not here. Check the north exit. Seal the floor. Darius took Victoria's hand again, guiding her deeper into the cramped tunnel. The only light came from his phone's dim screen, barely enough to illuminate a few feet ahead. Pipes ran along the ceiling like ribs, dripping occasionally, the entire passage humming with the vibration of the building's old mechanical systems. Where does this lead? Victoria whispered. Sub-basement, he murmured. Maintenance access to the freight corridors. And after that? Out, he said. If we're lucky. They moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by the narrow tunnel's padding. Behind them, the echo of pursuit faded, not gone, but distant. For the first time in hours, they could breathe, but not fully, not yet. After several minutes, the tunnel widened into a small junction. Darius crouched at a control panel embedded into the wall, a relic from the building's original construction. He brushed dust from the old metal plate, revealing a manual override for the lower maintenance levels. Can you open it? Victoria asked. I hope so. He worked the rusted levers, each one creaking in protest. One stuck, another released with a jarring clang. Then, slowly, the floor beneath a section of the wall slid open, revealing a ladder descending into deeper darkness. Air drifted up cool, mechanical, carrying the faint smell of oil and old concrete. After you, Darius said. She hesitated only a moment before descending. He followed, pulling the hatch closed above them. When his feet hit the sub-basement floor, the world felt bigger, an enormous industrial cavern stretching in every direction. Pipes ran along the ceiling, steam valves hissed softly, and distant generators thrummed like a heartbeat. Nobody comes down here, he said. Not unless something's broken. Something is broken, Victoria replied, her voice steady. The entire system. He nodded. Which is why we need to finish this. They made their way along the narrow walkway until they reached a small operations console, an isolated maintenance terminal. It wasn't connected to the primary network, which made it priceless now. Darius hooked up his drive. The screen glowed to life, casting their faces in cold blue light. Okay, he said, fingers moving fast. We pull the remaining infrastructure logs, camera overrides, badge anomalies, everything that ties Harrow's operative to the manipulations. And then, Victoria asked quietly, then we take it to someone the board can't ignore. Her brows tightened. Who? The federal regulators, he said. If Harrow is manipulating the market, this isn't just a corporate problem. It's a crime. She inhaled sharply. Going outside the company is the only way to survive this, he said. If we confront the board directly with this evidence, Harrow will crush us before we get a word out. Her silence confirmed she agreed. The data transfer ran percentages climbing agonizingly slow. 18%, 23%, 31%. The terminal hummed. Pipes above them rattled. Steam hissed. Something metallic clanged in the distance. Darius froze. Did you hear that? Victoria nodded. They found the tunnel. How close? She didn't answer. The transfer ticked upward. 41%, 56%, 63%. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number again. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she read the message aloud. You should have come quietly. The words sent a cold ripple down Darius's spine. Keep working, she said urgently. We need this evidence. He typed faster, forcing the old machine to work harder. 78%, 83%, 89%. The clangs in the distance grew louder. Boots on metal walkways, voices. Flashlight beams cut through the steam. They're splitting up, Darius whispered. Victoria stood behind him, eyes fixed on the dark corridor. Then so do we, she murmured. As soon as the transfer is done. 95%, 97%, 100%, complete. Darius yanked the drive free as footsteps thundered toward them. This way, he said, grabbing her wrist. They ran across the sub-basement floor, weaving between pipes and machinery. Flashlight beams swept behind them, voices calling out orders. They went left, cut them off. Victoria and Darius dashed around a steel column and froze. The man in the charcoal suit stood there, calm, waiting. His expression unreadable, his posture relaxed, as though he'd simply been expecting them to arrive. You've caused quite a mess, he said. But this is the end. Victoria stepped forward, chin lifted. You don't have the authority to detain us. The man's smile thinned. Miss Hale, authority is whatever men like my employer decide it is. Harrow, she whispered. I answer to no one else. Darius shifted, positioning himself in front of Victoria. You're not stopping us. I already have, the man replied. He raised a small device, sleek, metallic, a jammer. Darius recognized it instantly. If activated, it would corrupt electronic drives within a certain radius, including the one in his pocket. Without thinking, he lunged. The man anticipated the move, sidestepping, striking with professional precision. Pain shot through Darius's shoulder as he hit the steel railing. Victoria shouted his name. The operative turned toward her. Don't, Darius choked out. The man lifted the jammer. Victoria didn't blink. Her voice was steady but laced with fury. If you destroy that evidence, you won't just protect Harrow, you'll bury yourself with him. Regulators will trace every move you've made. They'll never see it, the man replied. No one will. He moved to activate the jammer, but Darius was already moving. Ignoring the pain, he launched himself forward again, slamming into the operative with every ounce of strength he had. The device skittered across the floor. A flashlight beam caught it. Then a boot slammed down on it. Marcus's boot. Hope I'm not late to the party, Marcus said, breathless but grinning, wielding a heavy wrench like a weapon. The man in the suit turned in shock. It was enough time for Victoria to grab a metal pipe from the ground and swing it upward, forcing the man to dodge backward. Darius staggered to his feet. Marcus, how did you? I followed you, Marcus said. Terrible idea, by the way. The operative, realizing he was now outnumbered, reached for his radio. But before he could speak, Victoria stepped forward, her voice low and cold enough to freeze steel. Tell Harrow his games are over. The man hesitated, just long enough for Marcus to knock the radio from his hand. It clattered across the concrete. Far in the distance, more footsteps approached reinforcements. Darius grabbed the drive, shoving it into a hidden pocket. We need to go. Now. Where? Victoria asked. Somewhere they can't silence us, he said, and somewhere they can't twist the truth. Marcus pointed toward an emergency access tunnel near the generators. That leads to the service alley behind the building. From there, the city's yours. Victoria met Darius's eyes. Are you ready? No, he said truthfully. But let's go anyway. They ran together toward the tunnel as the operative screamed for backup. Steam roared above them. Sirens began to wail. And behind them, a war born of greed, betrayal, and corporate shadows finally overtook the building. The three of them disappeared into the dark passage away from Hale Vision Media, away from Harrow's reach, and toward the truth that would either save them or destroy everything.